the machine was very busy just before we finished. So in fact, what you can do is, I will show you. Yeah. So what you can do is, apologies, I'm getting myself confused here. Right. So the trick is, if you look at hyper.job, the trick is there is a special way of running short jobs, which will be enough for us today. So I don't think the machine's as busy as it was, but if you want to run a job, then put those things in. S-batch, so we don't, Slurm doesn't have queues in the way that PBS does. It has things called quality of service. In other words, it's what kind of job. It's terminology, but you do QoS equals short. It's going to be a short job. It's going to be 4 or fewer nodes for less than 20 minutes, which is fine today. And reservation equals short QoS. So if you do that, you will get jobs through quickly. So it's up to you, but I would recommend, I've put it in the chat, I'd recommend doing that if you want to get jobs through quickly. Okay. So just to get back to where we were, we've done this. We've gone this far. We've done the basics, and I had looked at the it'd be interesting to find out now. There is no default budget or account, but the number of tasks per node or number of nodes would be interesting. If we try and submit a job, could someone submit a job take the XT high and try, for example, get rid of tasks? So this was the one where I was looking at hyperthreading, but I think the default that I gave you was node equals to. What happens if you don't have? You can comment these things out. If you don't have nodes, I wonder. I don't know actually. Can someone try submit a job without specifying the number of nodes, but do specify the tasks per node? If someone else could try the opposite, specify the tasks per node, but not the number of nodes. Be interesting to see what the defaults are. I don't know the answer. They're probably hidden in the you can look at the solution, I guess, if you want. But so a lot of systems are set up with defaults. I mean, historically on the EPCC systems, like on Archer, there typically weren't many defaults. It all had to be specified explicitly. Be interesting to know. So the question: will the weekend load type of jobs be available on Archer through this keyword? I guess so. Yes, I guess that's how we're going to. They haven't been set up yet, but that's the equivalent of that. There will be this kind of. There'll be definitely a QoS, and there may not be a reservation. I'm not sure, but there will be some similar incantation. At the moment, it's just one big. We just want to let people run, and it's one partition. It's all standard. The only restrictions are the number of jobs you can have at once is something like 16 to stop someone flooding the system. I can't quite remember. This will evolve, but yes, there will be various options like that. Yeah, it's a good question. Someone maybe be able to run. It'd be good if someone could run a job. I can try it here actually. Around if I don't have anyone has an answer. I'll try without specifying the nodes. Well, it ran. Okay. It may not have. Maybe ran too quickly for me to see what it actually did. So it ran on one node. Okay, so the default is one node. I guess it could work that out because you're asking for 128 tasks per node. Which if you do that, it's running on two nodes, but it's not clear. Oh, yeah, that took rather a long time. But it did. Let's see. And it did the yes, it filled them up. Oh, no, okay, fine. So the default, okay, so the default is okay. So the default, that's interesting actually. The default tasks per node is 256, which is because that's all the cores on a node. It includes the hypercores. So actually, yeah, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I should have looked at what the answer was. What does it say? Solution. Task per node 1. No, so this has changed. Okay. So the task per node, this has changed. Clearly on the previous system, this course was developed on a very small thing called the test and development system, which we had access to since maybe July. We've only had access to the 4-cabinet system for a number of weeks, a matter of weeks. So actually, this has changed. Tasks per node now defaults to 512, which is interesting. I will edit that if I can do it live. I'm slightly new to this trendy way of running the course, which is all through GitHub repos and things like that. So actually, maybe I'm not going to be able to do it. Just okay. So so what we're going to do now is just look at a few sort of a few of the other options. Just trying to maybe I should do this. Okay, so oh, for some reason you're seeing. Yeah, that's weird. You shouldn't be seeing. That's weird. Okay, so you saw what I was doing there. That's interesting. Anyway, so you saw that should fix this up. There are various. So this can be useful. There are various environment variables, a bit like PBS had equivalent ones. That the variables you set with SBatch are then reflected in these environment variables, which can be useful for doing things. And also, you can actually query the time limit. If this works for a job, which was so that job is 35112, and I can do, if you want to, (35112), and it was 10 minutes, which is what we said. Okay, SQ checks progress of your jobs. SQ is not very useful on its own because it shows everything, but you can SQ -u. I can never $user is your username. You can see there's none running. Okay, but that's useful to check what's running. And scancel can cancel jobs. Okay. There is the option to send emails when your job starts, ends, or fails. Can anyone see if they can find out how to do that? Maybe from the man page. I'll come back to this. Useful to look at the man page or the Google it. I'm not sure how to do it actually, but I don't know if people. Okay, so Yes, mail user and mail type. So there's an answer here. Let's see what it says. Mail type, yep, and mail, yes. So I guess mail user, I wonder if it knows your email. It's a good point. But that's, yeah, mail type, and it looks like there's a mail user. Okay, fine. Thanks, Emma. So the problem at the moment is that I don't think this is enabled. I don't think this is enabled on ARCHER2. Quick, would people find this useful? It wasn't enabled on Archer. And you can set up various thresholds, to say that whether when it gets through, at 58% with the specified wall time. Does anyone have any? So I mean, one of the reasons it wasn't possible on Archer is the Archer nodes weren't on the internet in some sense. ARCHER2 is a bit more standard, so I don't know if that's, yeah. So of the people that responded, about 50-50 within error bars. So that's interesting. Now, we've had this question before. Somebody asked a question before the break about multiple S runs. Is that person still here? I can't remember who it was. I know there was a question about. Yes, okay. So what we can do, we can try and find that out. So what I've done, so we'll just go through what it says here first, and then we can try the playing around. So srun, is basically you need to load the required software variables, set appropriate environment variables. If you're not using OpenMP, it's always helpful to set OMP num threads to 1 for various reasons, and then you launch it with srun, okay? And so you can specify, you can underpopulate those on ARCHER2 to access more memory on memory bandwidth. These are all interesting. You can start thinking about these, but it's not actually what Bonan asked. So I've written a little program here called delay.c, and all it does is it just says I'm running on node blah, then it gives the date, sleeps for 10 seconds, then gives the date. Okay, so let's check if that works. So if I let's compile it. CC minus, I know this is a delay dot C. Okay, and I've got a delay.job where I'm basically saying I want one node and one task per node, okay, one CPU task, okay. And I'm running in the short queue, and I'm running, rid of that, spurious now. Let's batch delay.job and do that, watch it. So it's running, so things are going through very quickly, and it should take at least 10 seconds because that was the delay on it. And there's a bit of startup. I mean, yeah, okay, so there we go. And we got delay 35215.out, and it said running one process on node 1000, and then it started at 0447 and finished at 04. So that's correct. That worked. Okay, that did what I thought it would do. The reason I need a delay is that if I had to run multiple jobs, they need to run for a finite amount of time. So what I'm thinking about now is let's not. And we'll run it in the background. Let's try this. 10. So that's 8, 19, 20. That's not going to use them all up. So is that the kind of thing you, and we have to now, is that the kind of thing that you meant, Bonan? Is that what you're interested in? Okay, you need a so I'm guessing here, if it's like AP run, you need to run them in the background, because otherwise this command won't return until this command won't run. So we need to run that, but you need to wait at the end because to make sure the script doesn't finish. It's a bit of a technicality. Okay, it's running. Okay, that's a novelty. Are they running in parallel or sequentially? Oh, no. Ah, okay, that's very interesting. That's the great thing about these introductory courses. You learn a lot. 35128. Delay dash 35128 dot out. So there we go. So we ran them all, and they all started. You see, there's a bit of it. They all started, and they all ran. So yeah, okay, there you go. That's interesting. The other question is, you were asking about allocation to the nodes, weren't you? So let's do 2 nodes, and let's run let's run 64, no 32, 64, 64, 32. So the interesting thing here is that these first 2 should be on the first node. This one, I think, you should have to span 2 nodes. So actually, what I need to do is I need to actually extend the code here, because I didn't rank. Sorry, now you're going to see that I can't use Emacs. Rank %d. On no %s, I'm going to do rank. So I need to print them all out now, otherwise, because I was assuming they were all running on the. And in fact, let's do that. Okay. Compile it still. Okay. So again, we expect this to run for a order 10 seconds plus whatever the delay time is, and see what happens. So if this finishes after 12 or so seconds, we're in the money. Okay. Oh no, well, maybe. Delay 35132.out. So So 64% on node 10, rank 10 on. I've not really printed out enough here, but I think it worked. Yes, rank 33. So I haven't actually put enough information here to disentangle them. But I think that worked. I think that worked. So I think the answer is yes. That you can do this, and this is interesting. Not only can you run more than one parallel job. I think you called them. Did you call them batch jobs? No, you had a word for them. Pack jobs. Is that what you called them, Bonan? Pack jobs. Yeah. So not only so I need to do a bit more digging, because I didn't put enough things in the print statement to really sort it out. But it looks to me like the first 32, the first 90, and this one even spanned 2 nodes. So that's really quite cool. Okay, that looks good. Hope the binding worked. Now, the worry is the binding may not work correctly. We need to check with XT-High. But it looks good. So I think there should be a way to do what you want to do. So that was useful. Thank you. These kind of things here, if you want to specify tasks per node 64, you can specify lots of things. hybrid MPI and OpenMP gets very, very complicated. It always is. So I wanted to just basically, ask. A lot of some modern applications allow you to specify, hybrid. So the annoyance with Collaborate, you can't set up polls in advance. I have to. So, are you interested in running hybrid MPI OpenMP jobs? Because it gets a bit technical. So it's just a question of how much time I spend on it. Okay, so a significant number of people are interested. So that's how it shall. So I will go through it, not in math already, but the way you do it, so the way hybrid MPI OpenMP, I'll hide these. I'll finish the poll for the moment. I can just lost my cursor again. I find multiple desktops very weird. I don't normally do. So the way it works is that imagine you have a bunch of cores. Rather than filling them all up with MPI jobs, you fill a subset of the cores up, say a quarter of them with MPI jobs. That means that you've got a lot of CPU cores free. Then you spawn OpenMP threads with OMP num threads. So for example, you might have on a 128 CPU core node, you might only run 16 MPI tasks. Each of those would have OMP num threads equals 8. So they would then occupy, so 8 times 16 is 128. You use up the entire node, but through a combination of processes and threads. So you need to do a number of things. You need to underpopulate the nodes in terms of MPI processes. You need to specify the right number of threads, but you also need to get them allocated correctly, because we want to make sure that the MPI processes and the threads don't overlap. But also, as I said, the ARCHER2 processors are a bit like 8 mini CPUs. And if you're familiar with OpenMP, although you can scale up an OpenMP job to the whole of a node, 128 CPU cores, it will only be efficient most likely within a NUMA region, within a mini CPU, as I'm calling it. So you want to place them all in the right place. And the way to do this is you have a variable called OMP places, which you set to cores, and that tells OpenMP how to bind things correctly. You say hint is no multi-thread option to srun, and I can't remember what that does, but you need to do it. But the distribution block that says don't do this. That says distribute things in blocks. Okay, so it says don't do any fancy cyclic distribution, because you don't want the threads to be distributed cyclically. You want all the threads to be together and close to the parent MPI process. This is all a bit of magic. The other thing you really need to say is this. Okay. So we've got 2 nodes. Okay, 8 MPI tasks per node and 16 OpenMP tasks per MPI. So that is a natural thing to do, because as I said, the mini CPUs, the NUMA regions on a AMD EPIC processor are 16 cores wide. So 16 OpenMP threads is a natural thing to want to use. That means you need 8 MPI tasks per node, because 8 times 16 is 128, and then you want to run across 2 nodes. Okay, so we want 2 nodes. We only want 8 tasks per node. Okay, we want now 16 CPUs per task says put the MPI processes out with a gap of 16. If you don't do that, they'll not get placed correctly. This is the equivalent to the -D option, the depth option on AP run. So this is a critical one for hybrid MPI OpenMP jobs. It says CPUs space them out. If you don't do that, it will put them in cores 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is not what you want. You want the MPI processes to be spaced out, the OpenMP process threads to fill in the gaps. Okay, so you see, and then you have to say export num threads equals 16, or you could actually do $slurm CPUs per task. You could pick up that environment there if you wanted. If you noticed there was a variable. Well, there's actually a slurm CPUs per task variable as well, which you can use if you want. And then this is where you for reasons I don't understand, these options are passed to S. I think the reason, I know why this is the case. The reason you pass these options to SRun is, as we've just seen, you can implement, you can issue multiple SRuns within a single job. So you might want to have different, I think this allows you to give different options to different instances of SRun. But you do, I don't quite understand this one. I can do a man page and find out. But this is the important distribution equals block xt high, and then you will. So this is the magic incantation. It's always a bit tricky to get right, and that's why this xt high program is so useful. It allows you to run a program that says where things are running. Okay, so if you have a hybrid MPI OpenMP program, and some applications like NAMD and I think things like CASTEP and VASP possibly have this functionality. I'm not an expert. What you're going to get wrong is you're going to get some of this stuff wrong. To debug this stuff, take your script, and instead of running NAMD, VASP, GROMACS, run xt high, and that will tell you where they go. So let's run this thing. And I like my little incantation here, which is this thing here. So, okay. So let's see if that works. So I have made a typo here because it's job name. So there was a question there, sorry. So can you just give me a quick second, because I need to fix that typo. So apologies for that. There was a bug there. So apologies for these. That was a typo. Oh, I've now done. Okay, doing all the mistakes. Right, I had a question there, and I'm on the wrong screen. So give me a second. Yes. So, Daniel David, is XT higher equivalent available to any one Archer, original Archer, so we can compare behavior? Very good question. That's an Archer. So this is where on Archer, so I can make the source code available. It's a very, very simple program, actually. So that, can you put a note of that on the Etherpad, Daniel, so I can remember that. That's a very good. That's a very, very good point. It would be nice to, yeah. So you can compare. That's an excellent point. An excellent point. Yeah. It's just a piece of. It's a very simple piece of code, but it's a very useful one. So let's have a look. We've got an error. I hope that's just these normal stuff. So we actually said here that we want block. Remember I said the default distribution for MPI processes within a node with cyclic. We've overridden that, and this is what you'd expect. Rank 0, thread 0 is. So these are all processes belonging to rank 0. These are all threads belonging to rank 0, and you can see it just goes as you'd expect. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 1, 2, 8, and then we skip over. So this is much more Archer like, and you can argue which the best is, but they could be overridden. So this gives you this completely linear distribution, which is sort of what I would have expected, I have to say. But that, okay. So we found out quite a lot today. So, I mean, the reason this is an issue is each ARCHER2 computer is made up of 8 NUMA regions, non-uniform memory access regions, 4 per socket, with 16 cores in each region. So this is so conceptually, an ARCHER2 node is 128 CPU cores all in the same shared memory, in the same way that an ARCHER node was 24 CPU cores in the same shared memory. Just like ARCHER, that's physically made up of 2 CPUs, okay? But the complication is there's a substructure within the CPUs. They're actually split up into, there's actually 4 mini CPUs. So the way they've done it is they've designed a very efficient 16-core CPU, wired up 4 of them together on one chip, and then stuck 2 chips into a. And so, you know, these are the things which are likely to work. 8 MPI tasks per node. And so, if you do 4 MPI tasks per node and 32 OpenMP threads per task, your OpenMP thread will span 2 NUMA regions, which is like 2 mini CPUs, and it will still run correctly, but the performance will probably drop off. So I did a study yesterday for a NAMD user, and I would have guessed that that was the best. But it turned out for NAMD, for her particular data set, this was the best. Okay? 8 MPI tasks per node and 8 NUMD threads per task. In fact, I can maybe show you the graph. This was a NAMD job. Are there any NAMD users? I find NAMD quite confusing, but there you go. Okay, so ignore the x-axis because I screwed this up because I don't understand Excel. But this is the tasks per node. So this is 1 MPI task, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Ignore the scale. Apologies, I did this in a rush. Okay, but this is 1 MPI task, i.e. 128 OpenMP threads, and this is 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. This is 32 MPI tasks, 4 OpenMP threads. So I said my initial guess would have been that this is the most efficient, which is 8 MPI tasks, but each using 16 threads. But actually, it turned out, and there's another option in NAMD, which is to do basically this was the best, and it makes a huge. This is the same code, same executable, but just run in a different mode. So you can see if you have OpenMP and MPI capability, you do need to do a scan to see what the most efficient is. And it made a huge difference here. 1 MPI task and 127, in this case, threads was 5 nanoseconds per day. I got almost 5 or 6 times the performance by just tweaking that, not changing the executable or data set at all, just how I laid it out. This would have been my first guess, which is 1, 2, 4, 8 MPI tasks, 16 OpenMP threads per task. But actually, by doing a scan, I found that the better one was here. So this is really worth spending some time playing around with things. Hybrid MPI OpenMP is tough. You do need to, I mean, it's confusing, but what the main thing is, try a few options and see what worked. Okay, so that's actually values are 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. I got my x-axis wrong here. So hopefully you find that useful. Standard out and standard error are default written to a file called this. But if you specify an error file, you get the streams to the named different locations. I would normally not recommend specifying a separate error file because then you don't notice it because you don't see the errors. Unfortunately, on ARCHER2 at the moment, these module restore and module loads write to standard error, which then pollutes your log files up to you. Okay. Someone asked about interactive jobs. Okay, so you can do this. So we can run the XT high like this. Oops, Daisy, I've done something. Okay, sorry, I can't cut and paste. I always do this wrong. Control C. So it ran. Okay, so I got a lot of warning messages because I didn't do any binding. I actually got a lot of warning messages here. Let's run a smaller. Let's run. Let's do a smaller run. Task per node equals 4 CPUs per task equals 64. Okay, so I didn't. You can't. It's doing something weird with OpenMP. It's guessing, but you can see that you can run on the. In fact, maybe it would be better to do my delay. Let's do the delay. Let's just do the. So there we go. So it did what we thought here. So it's actually relatively easy to run interactively. Okay, that can run a job interactively. I think is easier. The nasty thing on Archer is you had to submit an interactive batch job, then do an AP run, which is a hassle. This is quite nice for debugging, so that is nice. Okay. Someone asked about. Let's see if we don't specify anything. So how do I get a? So I should know this, but I've not done it. How do I actually get an interactive shell? So does anyone know? I should know. I'm the instructor. Apologies, but I don't. If someone knows, then it may require special nodes. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. These command lines get very long. So the affinity will be some default, and I don't. That was why I was slightly confused. No. Oh, okay, that worked. Okay, there we go. Yeah, fine. Yeah, that's it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So if I do $host name. Oh, it's host name, isn't it? I'm on one of the. So okay. So this is like you could. Well, okay. So actually, somebody asked just before the break, can you SSH onto a node? Oh, this has to be okay. This has to be an unused node. You can get a shell on a node, but it has to be an unused one. So you can't SSH into one of the nodes which is running a user job, but you can actually. So yeah, you're right, Irfan. It was minus PTY which I needed. That could we should. Sorry about this. I'm doing a bit things on the fly, but So hopefully there's some questions here which people have put in. I don't know how much you type at the end here. Oh, it does scale. Okay. This is notes to myself. I can't paste that. Fine, thanks. That was a useful thing. So this is slightly different to Archer. So here's a very interesting. This is a slightly technical question that I don't expect you to know, but I will ask it because it is interesting. It's something I didn't really understand for a long time. So on ARCHER2, when you queue sub a job, sorry, I'm talking about PBS, when you S-batch a job, it goes, and then at some point in the future when it's scheduled, the batch system runs your script, okay? It executes your script. But that is run serially, okay? It's srun that runs on the compute node, so it's clearly running your bash. It's running your batch script somewhere. Where do you think it runs? This is on ARCHER2. So have a guess. It's not obvious at all. So we've had quite a few guesses then. They're all so on ARCHER2, the actual answer is on one of the compute nodes. So what happens is if you ask for 10 compute nodes, one of them will be nominated as the boss, okay? And so if we go back to the original one, okay, what I can do is I can put host name in here. Yeah, let's actually just run 64. Okay. So we've run. Okay. So this will tell me where is the script actually running. So I'm going to try and close this poll. Okay. So I was running on. Oh. So they all ran on. That's a bit worrying. But anyway, the batch script was running on one of these nodes. But that is weird. Did I do something wrong? CPU task 1. Because I did CPU management was threads. Idiot. That's why. I'd left the previous one. So sorry about that. So yes, I'm running on. Oh, still anyway. It picks one of the two nodes. Okay, I've screwed something up here. But basically, I've not got the binding right. So there is an issue with with selecting the correct node. I need to sort that out. So we're halfway there for these multi jobs. But the main thing is it picks one of the nodes, and here it's picked node 2. It was actually running on more than one node, presumably, but it picked one. So can you still see the poll? Do you see the poll now? So this now I want to ask you on Archer, where does your batch script run? This is on Archer. Where do you think your batch script runs on Archer? Not ARCHER2, but Archer. And I can, while you're so it's much harder. So people have said, I've lost my cursor again. So it's actually, so the answer on Archer is actually on somewhere else. It's not on the login node or the compute node, it's somewhere else. And we can see that if we go to here. I'm on Archer here. Let's do a batch job. Let's just do one. So this is submitting. So you saw when I submitted an interactive job, srun. Okay, I'm on a node here. If I type host name, I'm on one of the compute nodes. Okay, an Archer, which is much slower, the PBS on Archer is much slower to respond. If I go there, you can see I'm on a thing called I'm on a mom node, which is not a login node and not a compute node. Archer had special nodes called mom nodes, which ran your batch scripts, and then only your compute job was run on the compute nodes. ARCHER2 is much more standard. One of the compute nodes is selected as the controller, which runs your batch script. It's a bit of subtlety, but it does help explain some idiosyncrasies. So I don't want to overburden things. So I think we've covered everything. ARCHER2 uses the Slurm scheduler. srun is used to place launch parallel executables in batch submission jobs. And someone asked a question about pack jobs, as they call them. So we can run them, but I'm not sure how to get the affinity correct. So I do need to sort that out. Check how to get affinity correct for multiple sruns. So at the moment, I think it's actually overwriting on the nodes. So apologies, but I mean it ought to be possible. It ought to be possible. So we'll look into that. And there are a number of different partitions or queues available, and we saw. I showed you some of the ones for the fast, for the quick turnaround. Okay. So are there any questions on that? That's sort of, we use this dummy application XT high, but that could have been anything. And you saw I ran delay there, or you could run anything you wanted. So if there are no questions, I'll just do the final bit before the next break. We took quite a long time with that, which is good, because I think went into some detail. Apologies if it was too much detail for some people. It's we've got a very diverse group of people here. We have people who are quite new to the system, which is great to get new users. People who are quite familiar with Archer, which is very similar. So it's a bit of a challenge to cope for both communities. But I just want to do the how to be a good Archer citizen. So we'll just do this very quickly. What can I do on the login nodes? So the important point is they're shared, okay? And so don't run jobs in the login node. A quick test may be a quick test if something runs less than 5 minutes. Okay. If you use too much resources, other users on the login node may start to be affected. Their login session will start to run slowly. So this is an issue. Okay. So basically, the command ps-ux is very, very useful. Okay. So basically, if I'm on, I can quit that. This is me on the login node. Sorry, if I do ps-ux, it shows what I'm running, and I am running. This is my running bash. Okay, fine. So that's what I'm running. If I was running a very, very heavyweight program, then it would show up as. So, for example, let's do. Okay. So this will be quite slow because I'm exporting the graphics, but I'm doing that for a reason. So it can be very slow. It should work. Oh, okay. I didn't because okay. So I didn't. Okay. I need to do. I need to enable graphics to do what I wanted to do. So apologies for the. I do have. So I'm hopefully going to kick up a graphical application. It complains about lots of stuff, as it always does. There I have Emacs running. Now imagine that Emacs went haywire under the ps-ux. There's my Emacs there. Okay. I can kill that with that process number. So that's the way. This isn't using it. It's using 3 point, but this isn't using much CPU. Okay. So if I can kill that, it's dead now. And Linux is a bit stupid. But 100% CPU means 100% of one CPU. Okay, so 100% CPU, it means you're fully using one CPU. Okay, on cleverer operating systems in the past, it gave you a percentage CPU of the whole system. So, but Linux tells you it's per CPU. Okay? So that's how that works. So in terms of manage ps-ux and kill are really the things which are so apologies, this is rendered incorrectly. So apologies, I thought this was fine yesterday. So I'll just go through this, but you shouldn't be running so apologies, there's been a rendering issue here. I've set this up incorrectly. I must have made an edit. But you shouldn't be running simulations. You can run compiling, okay? However, if the compiles take a very long time, it's probably worth actually doing a compile on the compute nodes, which you can do, and that's something which will be documented, okay? But for general, compiling on the front end is fine. Obviously, creating directories is fine. Running molecular dynamics simulation is not fine, but creating a large tar file is fine. Okay. So the one thing is that the login nodes, most software were built in a matter of tens of minutes, and you'll be fine. However, some they have very, very large compilation times, and in that case, you would maybe want to ask how to. It will be documented very soon. It may be documented already. How to run compute jobs. How to run compile jobs on the compute nodes. Okay. You should not use ARCHER2 login nodes to log into other external services. Outgoing SSH connections will be killed. Okay. Again, this is for security reasons. This was one of the holes which was exploited by people who hacked into a lot of HPC systems worldwide. They were logging from HPC system to HPC system, so we don't allow outgoing SSH connections. Okay. Don't share your login credentials. Okay. If we detect account sharing, we will require you to reset your access credentials. And so also accessing another ARCHER2 account from your own account is not allowed. Okay, you should not be logging into other people's accounts from your account. Okay, now all these things you may think they're a bit paranoid, but there were exploits recently which forced HPC systems worldwide to be out for weeks. That doesn't mean that we were compromised. Even if you weren't, you had to take the system out to do a full system check to check that you weren't compromised. So I appreciate that these policies make your life a bit tough, but they are necessary. Test before scaling, okay? So don't submit a huge job. And for example, imagine a job script with a mistake that makes it sit doing nothing for 24 hours on 1,000 cores because you just had a mistake, or where it requested 2,000 cores and only made use of 100 of them. Okay, so do little test jobs first. Okay, again, you don't want to submit a job, wait for 2 days for it to run, and then it fail in the first 10 seconds. You've seen there are these test queues which you can run short correctness tests before submitting the full calculation. It's easy to make a typo. The first line of your script could be copy star.dat into workspace. You might type copy star.dad, and then you won't find that out until you run. So it's often not the application which goes wrong, but the preamble and postamble, the job maintenance which goes wrong. Okay? Have a backup plan for your data. Okay, the work file system is not backed up at home; is only backed up for disaster recovery. So it's not there saying I deleted a file yesterday. Could you please get it back? It's there that if we have a system failure, we can restore. So it is backed up, so it's safe. It's not there for arbitrary recovery. So really, primarily, your data is your responsibility. Obviously, for code, you should use things like GitHub, GitLab. Large amounts of data, you should take copies off of ARCHER2 to possibly to backed up storage, hopefully locally. rsync can be useful for this. Again, your access to ARCHER should be time limited. So if you have a time limited project, you need to factor in time at the end to get your data off. Okay. And there's a user guide to dealing with data. The main thing is that your data is your responsibility. And we mentioned this a bit earlier. I actually did a test. I want to check that I did a test where the disks are so just checking whether I should take a break now. Apologies. It's the first time I've run this course in anger. I'm sorry, I don't have the timetable in my head. I apologize for dotting around. I'm sorry about this. I'll just be 1 second. Okay, it's not break till 3. That's fine. So we can finish this off and then have the break at 3. Sorry about that. So basically, transfer data. Okay, the ARCHER2 work file system is very highly parallel with a large number of disks. Okay, so actually, when you transfer data onto or off of ARCHER2, it's unlikely that the ARCHER2 disks are the bottleneck. If you get slow responses, there's a number of slow transfer speeds, and we saw that at least from ARCHER to ARCHER2, you got about 100 megabytes a second, which is not bad. These metadata operations, opening and closing files, are very, very slow. So, as I said, you don't go all the way to the supermarket to buy 1 pint of milk. Okay, there's a large setup cost. There's a large but you need to go there and you need to do a big weekly shop. You need to transfer lots of data. Okay? And also, metadata operations performed by other users can also interact strongly. The reason is that the file system is parallel. It has multiple disks. But it has to have a database, a central database, to maintain coherency. And that database could be a serial bottleneck. It's called the metadata server. And so, don't transfer don't do lots of small things to a small number of big things. Data transfer can be limited by network speed, but typically it's not the one you think it is. It won't be the Janet backbone. It's always the last mile. It's if I try and transfer data to my laptop here, will come down like a train down Janet and then go over my home Wi-Fi. Okay, so that can be very slow. So don't always blame the network. The main network, it could be a local thing, and things like firewalls can slow these things down. So often the limiting factor isn't the disk speed; it's actually the network speed, but not the main network. Often your local end, but the last mile problem, metadata or firewalls. Okay. And so, we can do archive files using tar and zip. And always consider the best way to transfer data. Okay, if you're transferring large amounts of data, think about it and send a query in. I mean, that's really the thing to do. Say, look, I'm going to have to transfer these large amounts of data. How am I going to do it? And we can give you advice. And as I said, the kind of gold-plated version is this Globus Online, which originates from the grid days, but it is a sort of self-adaptive, multi-connection, it takes a bit of setting up. Once it's set up, it allows very, very fast transfer speeds. For most people, SCP will be enough as long as you obey the small number of large files using tar and zip. But if you do have, so I knew you were going to ask that. I should have checked up about the RDF, and I should know that, and I don't. I knew someone, as soon as I started this talk, I knew someone was going to ask that, and I should know. I'm not on the systems side of Archer. I'm very much on the applications and user side, but that is a very so the problem with the RDF is it's very useful, but it's very, very old, and the disks are they're just so old that they're not really that reliable anymore. So that's why the RDF so no. So that is a very good question. So I should know that, and apologies, I don't know the answer. So I will take a note. I mean, don't take this as gospel. I would expect the RDF is going to be around long enough to allow you to transfer the data to ARCHER2, but I don't know how the timelines of the RDF and Archer, because if the ARCHER2 service ramps up successfully quickly, then Archer will be turned off. The limiting factor, the reason why we can't run ARCHER2 and Archer at the same time is that there's not enough physical space. To physically put ARCHER2 into our machine room, we need to physically take Archer out. And that's some juggling act. But I appreciate there are questions about the RDF. So I will take a note to, for some reason, my Etherpad isn't persistent. So I see we've got a few questions, so I'll go back into the so questions were okay. So okay, so it was 3 questions. So that's a very good question. I will follow that up for you, and I will send an email out to the home group because it was asked in this forum. I think that'd be a sensible thing to do. Okay, fine. So be careful how you use the login node. Okay, again, if things start going slow on the login node, the first thing to be paranoid, assume it's yourself, and then tidy up. So ps minus ux and kill, or kill minus. The other one is kill. Sometimes things won't die. So what did I do there? I did kill it's gonna, but it doesn't accept. You can do kill minus kill. That's really like, you know, kill minus kill is really like, you know, take no prisoners. Your data on the system is your responsibility. So, you know, /work isn't backed up, /home is backed up, but only for disaster recovery. So if you delete a file, you know, and there is no trash bin in Unix. When you delete something, you delete it. Don't run stuff on the login node. Don't run, you know, don't run big job on the login node. Don't be a bad person and run stuff on the login node. That's really important, because, you know, the big problem here is that it affects all users. If you mess up on a compute node, yeah, you've messed yourself up, and you've cracked, you know, your job's crashed. You've used up too much memory. Okay, that was, you know, it was your compute node. They're exclusive, but the login node are a shared resource. So there's a certain amount of good citizenship to be going on here, and I appreciate it's easy to do things. I've done it, you know, to accidentally leave things running. You will get contacted probably or asked, but, you know, just keep an eye on it. And feel free, if you see that the system is slow and you think there's an issue, send a help desk query and say, you know, or if you have problems, that I've got a runaway job I can't kill, you know, the help desk is there to help you. So send a query. And I did that the other day, saying, look, the login nodes on seriously really slow. There's this user running lots of stuff. Is that an issue? And it got, no, the user isn't. That isn't the issue. It's fine, but it just I'm not saying to rat people out. I'm not saying that. Don't be vindictive. But, you know, if you think there's something wrong on the system, send in a query and say it's running slowly. To be honest, the major reason why the system runs slow will be file system issues. If you do ls and it takes 5 seconds or 10 seconds to come back, that's someone hammering the file system, and that's something else. The first foremost is don't hammer the login nodes. So that's the end of that session. We seem to keep to a reasonable amount of time. What I'm going to cover in the last session, which I will go through relatively quickly because so many of you are Archer users, is really using SAFE very quickly and the next steps. And then I will finish at 4. I should be around for a bit afterwards. I'll cover SAFE and the next steps briefly, and then we can have a discussion. But I will aim to finish as soon after 4 as possible. So are there any final questions? This is an opportunity, you know, if you have jobs you want to run, if you're a NAMD user and you want to run NAMD, or a GROMACS user and you want to run GROMACS, this is your chance to bring data on and have a go. You know, I suspect, is there a, there we go. Oh, okay. So, you know, I have these things. I have now GROMACS and NAMD available. Okay? So, you know, if you want to play around and look at module avail, I appreciate it's rather verbose, but they should all be in the same. You can see that there are hopefully in a similar place. There we are. Code Saturn, ELK, LAMPS, NW Chem, Contrast Retro, Open Firm, NAMD, GROMACS, CP2K. You know, there are versions of these, and we'd really like people to use them to find out. We hope there aren't issues. If you're a CP2K user, feel free to bring on a couple of files and try and run a job. Okay, so you're welcome to do that. Okay. So there's a question here on if I need it. Is it already possible to ask Archer support to install software on ARCHER2 if I need a specific version of GROMACS NAMD? That's an interesting question. Definitely for the early access users who are on at the moment, yes. But I would send an email in. Yes, definitely. I mean, say that you're on the course and that you would like it. I mean, if I'm honest, it won't be the highest priority because, of course, the highest priority at the moment is for the people who are using production runs. But yes, just send in a support query, and definitely say that you currently have an account as part of a training course, and that you would like this. That's definitely worth doing. We can't guarantee to do it at a very short time scale, but we will do our best. Is there specific functionality you need? Is it very recent versions or? Okay, so I'll just very briefly go over how you use SAFE. Now you've already interacted with SAFE because, of course, you've had to apply for an account. But how can you manage your ARCHER user account, ARCHER2 user account? How you can get licensed software, and how you can look at resources and historical usage. And you need to know what SAFE is and how it can be used, and understand what reports you can generate. So, I mean, SAFE is this web-based tool which has been around for a long time. It started off in the days of Hector, which was the precursor to even to ARCHER, and it's a whole bunch of things. But you've already used SAFE to apply for your ARCHER2 user account, but it can be used for more things than that. And you may be familiar with this as an ARCHER user, although you may be an ARCHER user and not used all this functionality. There is a very comprehensive user guide which you can use. Oh, apologies, that is a broken link. So there is a user guide which will be for the old. So that is a to-do. Apologies. There is a user guide. That's just that link that's broken. Apologies. The important point is that you have one instance on the SAFE identified by your email address, and you have multiple machine accounts. Okay, you can have multiple ARCHER2 login accounts. I have several already. And also you may have access to other systems. And actually the SAFE technology, although developed at EPCC, has been adopted across the tier 2 systems. So you can have multiple login accounts on multiple services associated with a single SAFE account. So there are a number of things you can do. You can manage your SAFE account and lots of things, set contact details, preferences. But one thing you can do is you can use your institutional single sign-on. Okay, so you have a SAFE password which you would have set, but actually a lot of institutions, particularly academic institutions, operate central single sign-on services, and you can associate it with that. And what you do is you log on to SAFE with your existing password, and then you do your details, register institutional ID. And then you can select your home institution if it appears on the list as a registered one, and then you can link that. So you don't need to remember your SAFE login. It will just be the same as the single sign-on for your institution. So whenever I log in the morning, I have a single sign-on to University of Edinburgh, and then you can do that. Okay. Also, you can update your email notification preferences. You'll see, all users are sent critical emails. So you can't opt out of absolutely critical emails, but you can set which emails you're interested in. And if you think you're getting too few emails, you can up it. If you think you're getting too many, you can reduce that. The login accounts allow you to view available resources, and when you select a login account, you'll see a summary of the systems it has access to, resources available and used, and list of licensed software it has access to. And you already have used it for picking up your initial login password. So it might be useful if I actually look at this. If I get a SAFE, if I go to I'm actually logged in at the moment. If I look at you can see I have lots and lots of login accounts. But if I look at the one that I'm using just now, which is this one, you can see that it is TA005DSH. This is my login name. This is the machine, which is the ARCHER2 4 cabinet. It's active, and the project. This is the part of this temporary project. Okay. Now you can do request access to package here, which unfortunately isn't quite operational, but will be soon. I can view my login account password. Now this is perfectly safe to show you this because this is a one-shot password. So this was the one-shot password I had when I first logged on to ARCHER. And it has been changed, and the SAFE is only there to retrieve your initial. So whenever you do the first time you get an account, or if you do a password reset, okay, I can request password reset. Okay, that will change, and I'll pick it up from the SAFE, but it's not sent back. Okay? So when you change your password on the system, it's not reflected on the SAFE. Okay, but I can look at user usage report. So I can see that now actually this is probably not up to date because I've only been running the jobs today. So you would normally see a history of your usage here, or use a job report. I'm not going to see any. So because this is really used for long-term things. This is saying now how many jobs have I run, how many kilowatt EUs have I used for the past several months. But you can track your that's that project there that we're a member of. Okay. I'm a manager of this, so you probably wouldn't see this page because I'm a manager of this group, so that's not something you would see. But this is the page you kind of see for your account. Okay. So when you reset your login and password, so that's a very good question. The question is, does ARCHER2 have a command line interface equivalent of budgets to see usage? So unfortunately, not at the moment. And the reason is that budgets are not a native feature of Slurm. Slurm itself only has a concept of whether you're allowed to run or not. So what we do is we monitor your job usage, and if the budget goes negative, we tell Slurm this user is no longer allowed to run. But Slurm doesn't. Slurm only knows go, no go, as to whether Slurm itself doesn't store budget information. So someone asked this the other day. So at the moment there isn't. Now someone's possibly working on that. There is a database obviously which stores that information, and it should be possible to query it. But that there is not currently a command line interface for budgets because of the way that Slurm works. We've had to change that whole infrastructure. It's a very good question, but not at the moment. It's something which people are looking at. Does that answer your question? It is a good question. I mean, a colleague of mine gave a talk. Just a few seconds. About Slurm scheduling system, and the slides are here. I think he covered this I thought he had a way of. There's a lot of stuff about scheduling here. Okay, so it doesn't. He illustrated this live. So okay. So there is a way of. There it is. Okay, so this is the closest you can do. So you can check if a budget is positive. Okay, so I can do on my account. Okay. So you can see that I have a budget here, okay? So I'm allowed to run. And I think it's this, what does he say here? Max T-res min CPU equals 0. I'm failing to get that. Okay, but basically sorry. I should have cut the whole thing. Apologies for that. Right. So oh, it wasn't Adrian, it should have been user equals DSH. So basically, I am allowed to run. No, I'm failing to do this. I will give up in a second because I'm clearly taking up a lot of time for doing something. I'm not doing very well. Fine. So basically, I'm allowed to run. Not DSH. TA005 DSH. So I am allowed to run on this But it would, but so that's showing I'm allowed to run, but it doesn't tell me how much. So you can check if a budget is positive or not if you look at this talk, but you can't check what it is. Sorry, that was rather drawn out explanation. You can also you can pick up your initial login password. You can reset your login password. You can add SSH keys to your account. So you have to register an SSH key to log in, but having done that, you can add more SSH keys. So you can have more than one SSH key associated with your ARCHER2 account. So if you wanted to log in from more than one system that you used, you could register more than one SSH key, which can be useful if you're copying data from multiple sources. And you can request access to licensed software. Another thing we like you to do is to record your research outputs. There's a way of your details publications. That's a nice way of recording, so we know what publications been on ARCHER2 research. And there's a service information reports that allow you to do various things. So if I go to my service information reports, I could do. Now you won't see all these actually because I have privileged access, but I do details of project job wrong with a project. These may not show because so there haven't been it. We have run jobs, but this database is only updated, I think, daily. So this is really for historical reporting purposes. So you wouldn't see anything interesting there. Okay. So I mean, SAFE allows you to manage accounts and resources online. I don't know if there are any questions people have about what they can do, but the most important point is that it does allow you to look at your usage, your budgets, and your disk usage on a sort of daily snapshot basis. It's not instantly up to date. If you think, I had 100,000 compute units, how many have I used? Or I had 500 gigabytes of disk storage, how much have I used? SAFE is the right place to go to because it will be up to date as of a day or so ago, which is, I think it's updated nightly. And that's the kind of information which you want to do, particularly if you're a project manager, but also just as a user. So the final thing is, how do I get further help? The service desk is really the number one contact point. Contact the ARCHER2 service desk, support at archer2.ac.uk. Okay. What we're offering under ARCHER2 is a service which is a callback, where basically, if you have a query, sometimes queries are quite difficult to solve over email, and just chat to somebody would be useful, either by video call, by phone. So you can book a call back for somebody to come and talk to you and discuss a problem. But actually, for this course, we will be offering a sort of office hour within the next 3 or 4 weeks, where we will advertise it and you can drop in and ask me or someone else some questions about. So the idea is that we run a course, a full day course like today. You have access for maybe about a month with your accounts. You may come across issues. So in a few weeks, hopefully before the accounts close, we will have an office hour. We call it a tutorial session. A virtual consultancy, I think is the proper term. I will just schedule a collaborate session. There won't be an agenda, but me or one of my colleagues will be available for you to ask questions. But you're always allowed to email support. The documentation is evolving, but keep an eye on it, and it's regularly updated. And there's a quick start guide and best practice guides and lots of other things, all of which is evolving at the moment as we get to know the system. ARCHER2 training, there's lots of training. COVID has had a huge impact on the training program for 2 reasons. One is we're not able to deliver face-to-face, and that's why we're delivering online like this. Secondly, it's had an adverse impact on the entire timeline of the ARCHER2 service, obviously. And so, the actual courses, the original course schedule has not been adhered to because, of course, we don't have an ARCHER2 service. We're just starting to run ARCHER2 specific courses as of basically this week. But there's a bunch of courses, but we're very, as the service develops, we're going to be running courses on package use. So we're going to be using package X efficiently on Archer. So we hope to have a range of courses like using CP2K efficiently on Archer, using NAMD, and we'll get experts to do those things. So hopefully there'll be courses which will be appealing to users of a particular package. We're running lots of software and data carpentry courses, and also when the containers are up and running, we'll talk about how to do containers. But keep an eye on the ARCHER2 training pages, which you've seen already. That keeps you up to date with what's coming up. So getting access to ARCHER2 for your research, we hope to have an ARCHER2 driving test shortly, which will be equivalent to the ARCHER driving test. It isn't available yet, clearly, because the system, we have to ask questions about usage of the system. We've only been on the system ourselves for a matter of weeks. But that will be a way of getting instant access. And if it's the same as ARCHER, it will be for 6 months, and that'll be sort of for playing around and getting up and running. There's a standard way of getting access through EPCC and NERC consortia. There will be sort of pump priming grants, but also if you're doing a research grant, and there will also be regular UK Research Council access to HPC resources calls. So the methodology will be very similar to ARCHER, but you should look at the ARCHER2 access page, which will cover all those things. And actually, if you're interested, if I go back to this page, it's always worth looking at the training page, because not only do we have upcoming training courses, we also have this. I go to the training page. We also have the course repositories. This is material from all the recent courses, and actually we ran a seminar just this week on Wednesday, access mechanisms for ARCHER. So there is a slide and a video there given by my colleague Joe talking about how to access various routes for accessing. So again, that's all up there. Longer term, there's an ECSE program which allows you to apply for, it's called Embedded Computational Science and Engineering Research funding, which is basically to fund an engineer for 6 months a year to do some development work to improve your code on ARCHER2. And you can apply for a named person, it might be yourself or a colleague, or you want to hire a postdoc, or it can be somebody from something like maybe from the ARCHER2 team here at EPCC. But you need to look at the ARCHER2 ECSE pages. There's been a couple of those calls already, and it's that's a way of getting funding to do software development work focused on ARCHER2 software. There's a lot of documentation is currently evolving, a lot of training opportunities, and a lot of access. So I don't want to labor the point. And so really, I just wanted to end on this. I think it's been a long day. You can look at this page yourself, but we're coming up towards the 4 o'clock when I said I'd finish. I think we've covered everything today, which allows you to get onto ARCHER, to run batch jobs through Slurm, and to load modules, which will allow you to load HPC packages, which are hopefully there. I mean, there's GROMACS there if you want to run GROMACS. But I would be interested, if people want to, if people are interested, then you can look at accessing ARCHER right now. But I think it's been a long day. It's a Friday, and I think the main point, as I said, your access isn't going to finish at 5 p.m. today. Your access to these accounts will endure towards till the end of November, I guess, a month's time, and so you'll be able to follow this stuff up yourself. And please get in contact if you have any issues. But our hope is that with a combination of this course is going to immediately move to the course materials repository, and the videos will appear shortly when they've been processed. But the material will be there immediately, and the documentation is evolving, so you'll be able to have this material for reference in the videos in the near future. But hopefully that's enough information for you to be able to get up and running your own packages. Sorry, running the software you want to do do your science. So that's really all I had to say just now. As I said, I didn't want to go on too long, given that it is a Friday and it's been a long day. Were there any final questions about anything? So happy to take any questions at all you might have about ARCHER2 or HPC in general, anything which has occurred to you over the period of today. Yeah, so Ranjit's got a question. What's your question?
Yeah, hi. Sorry if I have missed it, I don't know. But, regarding the usage of like licensed softwares, so
Yeah.
how do we do that? Like you mentioned that I can log in through my university page directly, but then I'm just confused about if I'm supposed to want to use the ANSYS software. How can I run
So
that
that's
one?
different. Okay, so there are 3 levels. There's unlicensed software, which is things like NAMD and GROMACS, which are available for everybody. By licensed software here, we mean software where you have to something like VASP or other academic packages which aren't controlled by a licensed server, but you have to have authorization to do it. So for something like VASP, you have to prove that you have a valid license from the VASP developers, and then we will give you access. So for commercial software like ANSYS, that you would then have to bring your own license. So that's different. You would have to have your own license file, and that involves setting up access to a licensed server, obviously. And that's not in place yet. It will be in place because it was in place on Archer. But what you'd have to do there is you'd have to bring along your own actual license, which you would install or call out to, and that requires us to put in the infrastructure for ARCHER2 runtime to contact an external license server, and that isn't in place yet, but it's something we're working towards. That will be for commercial software.
So
There are those 3 years.
So by meaning on is in like I cannot use the license which I have available from the university.
Say that again.
Like you're mentioning, I have to have a own license. So does it
Oh
mean
no! Oh,
that I cannot use the university?
No access to a license. Sorry, you have to be authorized to use the software, which means having a license.
Yeah.
That could be an institutional license from your university, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
We just don't quite at the moment have the infrastructure to do that. You could, but on Archer, what you do is you basically, as I understand it, when you run a job, you say, I have access to this license, and it contacts says yes, you can run, and it'll be the same. It will be exactly the same. So when I said your own license, I meant as opposed to, we don't have licenses for ARCHER2 for these things. We can install the software, but for you to access it requires you to provide a license, which could be, as you say, an institutional license. And that would be how it will work. That's how it works on Archer.
Thank you.
So Bonan has asked, is there any plan to move to dynamic 2-factor authentication like the one for SAFE in the future ARCHER2? That's a very good question. So the current access restrictions to Archer, and I do find them a hassle. For example, when you SCP, it's much nicer if you don't have to enter a password. They had to be put in at short notice because of the worldwide security issues. So that is something we will consider in the future. I mean, there's not been time to consider that, but I believe that I can't guarantee anything, but that is something which is under consideration. I'm sure. Is the current setup too inconvenient for users? I guess this is the kind of thing we could discuss. Yes, I don't like. I mean, yeah. So yeah, I guess this is something we can discuss. There will be various ARCHER2 user group meetings, and that's the kind of thing we can discuss with users, what people think. It's a very good question, but I don't know the answer. But could you put that in the Etherpad? Something that I will consider. It's not. Sorry, it's not up to me, but something I will raise. As I'm not a systems person. I don't think the current setup is set in stone, but it was. It's the current one we have, and our focus in the next months is going to be on making the service as stable and useful to users as possible. And so the authentication will is a potential to be looked at, but it won't be top of the priority list, if I'm honest. Unless it stops people doing their work, which I don't think it does, although it's slightly awkward. Are there any other questions? So if not, I would like to thank everyone for coming to the course. I hope you found it useful, and you will be getting an email from the EPCC course admin, training admin, asking for feedback. I would appreciate if you filled in the feedback. We do take feedback very seriously. We consider it at weekly meetings, and it can be submitted anonymously. That's the default, so you can say what you think. Good feedback is great. It makes us feel good about ourselves. We can tell EPSOC how wonderful we are. Critical feedback is also really important, which we take very seriously, so we can identify issues. Obviously, this is the first public run of this course, and there will be issues with it. We would like to know how it could be improved, and that's the kind of thing which we value on the feedback. So the feedback, you give a score, but also there's a section of comments you can give for any suggestions that you have for the course. So that's it. I'd like to thank everyone. If there aren't any other questions, we're just about on time. It's 4 o'clock, as I promised. So goodbye and enjoy Halloween. I don't know